I enjoyed writing this intro. I won't lie to you, because obviously we've not actually spoken that much. I don't actually know that much about you. So I said to Keith, I said, "What can I say in my intro?" So you can blame Keith for this.
No problem.
To be fair, it's 50-50 Keith and me. Um, who am I? Right. Hello, everybody.
You try rep Keith. Ready?
Oh, well, stand up a minute. Stand up. Let's have a look. Let's have a look. Hey, Keith. Keith Boyle. Your store is getting an extra plug. Brilliant. That's kind of his unofficial third visit to the podcast. Right, let's go. Hello, everybody. My name is Ian Taylor, and you are listening to the Marvel Card Collectors Podcast, your weekly digest of hobby goodness. Agent Smith in The Matrix was a mysterious character who liked to hunt down the free humans and multiply himself as a computer virus does. Today's guest is a different kind of Smith, equally mysterious, as he's one of the biggest collectors in the hobby today, yet flies under most folks' radar. He likes to hunt anime, Ages, and Infinity Gauntlet related comic cuts for the Zeck of it. Do you like what I did there? That was pretty good, wasn't it? Yeah. Formerly a comic store owner, and without a fine beard in tow, as he shaved it off before today. Welcome to Stephen Smith.
Thanks,
Good
Ian.
morning.
Good morning.
That was laboured but amusing. Or at least I found it amusing.
I appreciate it.
Yeah, that's right. I always like to take a run at those things, and sometimes they fly, sometimes they don't. Helps if you don't muff it up while you're reading it. Um, so before we get into it, um, you chose Joe Jusco to be the intro for this week.
I did.
You did. So that's the first time I've reused the Joe Jusco intro. So because we went through the sketch card list, and you're not a major sketch card collector, but then you reeled off Jusco's
Yeah,
name, and I was like, you know what? Let's go with Joe. You got to go with Joe.
absolutely.
Have
Yeah,
you ever met him at a con or anything?
I haven't. I don't get to go as many of those as I like. But and honestly, these days I'm a little bit older, so there's not as big as a fan of or excited about going to them as I used to be when I was younger.
Okay. Well, you're younger than me, so
I,
But
I'm almost 47.
yeah. Well, I'm going to be 50 this year, so. Um, but I imagine being in America, you've probably been to a lot more cons than you've probably been to more cons than I've eaten
Yes,
Chinese
as a
takeaways.
fan, I think maybe having owned a store and done a bunch of those as a dealer, kind of you know uh, loses the luster a little bit.
Yeah, yeah, I'm sure.
They I view the kind of thing I hear con, I think, oh, it's just work.
Yeah. Well, you've seen how the sausage is made, I guess,
Hmm.
haven't you? So you've kind of been there unloading the long boxes at stupid o'clock in the morning, and
I ended up in physical therapy once over all the work involved in a con as I tore my labrum.
wow. Okay,
Yeah.
yeah, that ain't cool. That ain't cool. Right, we're not going. Let's not do that again. Um, so I mentioned Mike Zeck. I alluded to in that intro. So that's kind of how you and I first kind of came into each other's orbit, because I was selling some, I think it's Marvel Ages or Marvel 80th comic cuts, because I
Hmm.
went deep into Marvel 80th especially.
Me
Um,
too.
and you, yeah, yeah, well, we'll talk about that in a minute. And you snapped them up. So you're a bit of a fan of Mike Zeck,
I'm a
aren't you?
big fan since I was a kid. Since Secret Wars, he did a great four issue. I was a big Batman fan as a kid, so he did this 10 Nights of the Beast four issue
Hmm.
series on Batman, and so I have tons and tons of Mike Zeck stuff. And I've met him a few times. He's a great guy. Unfortunately, for me, he retired out of the country, so now he doesn't attend cons anymore.
Oh,
But yeah, just love it. Always loved his work. He did the original Punisher miniseries for Marvel.
hmm,
Um, just a big fan. So I
yeah,
buy up anything I can find.
cool. Where's he moved to?
I think he's in the Philippines.
Oh, that's a considerable relocation.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay, good. All right. So no chance I'll ever meet him at a con either, really, unless I go over there. I was talking to someone randomly. I was talking to someone who I think I might be misremembering this, but last year we had Renee Witterstadt on the podcast, and I have a
Mhm.
feeling she might represent him.
I don't think she does. I've met
No,
Renee. She represents like Michael Golden and a few others.
yeah,
She actually signed. So it was funny. The last time there was a con in New Orleans, she was there and had her sign
mm.
some books for me. But no, he was. I'd seen him a few times, and maybe she repped him, but uh, I don't. I can't. I don't think so. I'm not sure.
Yeah, yeah. No, she's got a fair few artists and actors under her umbrella,
Hmm.
and
She
there's
does.
one in particular, Mark Texera, who I'm jonesing to speak to for this podcast, so I need to reach out to her.
Yeah, that would be
It
fantastic.
would be, yeah. I just want to talk about his,
His art is amazing.
yeah, yeah. He's a, and he's done a fair few sketch cards for some of the Rittenhouse
Some
sets as
iconic
well.
Wolverine stuff from when I was young, much younger.
Yeah. Well, Mark, for me, it's Ghost Rider with him.
Oh, absolutely.
That
Yeah.
Ghost Rider run, which I need to reread that actually. I need to get back into those. But anyway, you so you mentioned this before, but you were a comic store owner. So what's your kind of background? Where did what's Stephen's journey up to this point?
Sure. Yeah. I've collected comic books and then Marvel cards kind of came a little bit later, but as a teenager. But since I was 10, my cousin introduced me to them. And there I took some breaks here and there as I kind of got older and whatnot. But then I had an opportunity to buy out a comic book store that was just they were getting out of pivoting out of comics and they were just going to do tabletop games and whatnot. So I think I bought half a million, three quarters of a million comics from them, something two truckloads, two
Wow,
giant truckloads.
wow.
When I was I don't know, 27 or 28. And that's what really thrust me into. I mean, as a kid, I always wanted to work at the comic store. I always wanted to have
Mm,
one when I was an adult. And as an adult now, I tell people when they ask me for advice, I say just don't, just enjoy
really? Right.
collecting your thing because it is not as exciting as you think it is, right? But and then my wife and I started selling a lot online, and then about 12, I think 12 or 13 years ago, it all just kind of blends together after a while. But we owned a brick and mortar for 11 years
Wow.
together. She was the operating manager. She was just a phenomenal business person, and let me kind of do my thing when I was available because I've always worked in IT
Yeah.
uh, as a full time gig. So we had a great business. It did very well, and then we came up on our last lease, and our son is mid 20s at the time, and he's 27 now. But decided finally got out of him that he didn't want to learn how to he didn't want to fully take it over. He was our assistant manager for the
Yeah.
store. Decided he wasn't what he wanted to do for his career, so we said, hey, no problem. We're at the end of the lease. We're just not going to renew it. We're going to close it down because we don't want to hang on, sign another, 5-year lease if
Mm,
there's no transition, right, to him taking that on as his career. So that's kind of how we decided after 11 years in business to shut it down.
wow. Wow. Okay. So let's go back. So you had your son when you were like really young, like 20? Cool.
So technically he's my stepson,
Okay. All right.
but he's my son,
Yeah.
right, for
Yeah.
all intents and purposes. Well, but yeah, I've raised him since he was 8. My wife and I are the same age, so
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
um, I was in the Marine Corps for a while, got out, was in school, met my wife, and here we are. Gosh, 17 years later.
Wow. Wow. We've had a few people who used to be in the forces on this podcast of late. Because I think Jalen Warner, I think he was in the Navy.
Hmm.
And Nathan Braben, he was infantry, I think, if I remember correctly. Anyway, the traditional thing, if I was American, would now be to say thank you for your service, wouldn't it? Because
It's funny.
Americans say
I'm
that
not
all the
I'm
time
not
to
a
each
big
other.
fan. Like
No, no,
I'm
no.
I'm all for that kind of stuff, but like for me personally, I'm not a fan of the
Yeah,
whole thing.
yeah.
Yeah.
No, I know. It does. It's an interesting cultural thing for me to see people do that and the expectation that it's done as well.
Right.
I often see people commenting um,
Yeah.
to people that I know who've been in the set, and they might post something, and all of a sudden, loads of people will be just posting just that, maybe with a flag or something like that. So I think it is a very, very American thing.
Yeah,
Um,
well, it is, and for me, it's more like, look, I volunteered, right? It's a volunteer military, and if you want to thank me, then be okay with people exercising their rights, right? Versus shouting them down and things like that.
mm,
So
mm, yeah, yeah, no, makes perfect sense. Makes perfect sense. So you closed in 2021. You closed the store, is that right?
yes, we did. Yeah, toward the end of the year,
Wow.
2021.
Okay. So did all that inventory just go, or do you still have a pretty sizable personal collection
So,
hanging?
fortunately for me, like my wife, we've always been very big in participating in industry events and learning how to be a better retailer and all these things. So we participated in a lot of comic and game industry things annually, right?
Mm,
So
mm,
we built this big network of business, other business owners, and we sold off a lot in that way. So it's funny. Keith and another retailer from Colorado flew down, bought a lot of stuff. Left with a big truck full of stuff. I sold locally to a bunch of other retailers.
yeah.
And so we have, I have my house is fairly large. We have a mother-in-law suite. It's pretty full still, right, of stuff. But we sold the majority of it. We had one of those. If you're familiar with Magic and the Gathering, we had a
Yeah.
Wizards of the Coast premium store. So I mean, pretty nice store. So they sold off all the premium fixtures that we had custom made, and so we came out looking pretty good, and it's not like a burden to store what's left for now as we kind of filter it out.
Yeah. Yeah. Cool. So what's the stuff that won't leave you? What's your kind of core personal collection? I'm guessing Infinity Gauntlet at the very least is
Well,
going to remain in that box.
yeah, I'm a big fan of the some of the early event comics. So Secret Wars, obviously,
Yeah.
because Zach and Jim Shooter and whatnot. Um, Infinity Gauntlet's big for me. I'm a big Frank Miller fan, so I have a lot of all of the old Frank Miller stuff. We talked about that poster you can't see.
Mm, mm.
It's in my background there. Um, uh, it's funny though, because like when I collect things, I love Bronze Age Marvel, big Bronze Age
Yeah.
guy.
Yeah. Yeah.
So when something comes in to my collection, like I apologize to anybody else that collects Marvel cards. It's just basically gone forever. I rarely part with anything. Because I as silly as it sounds, and I know like you kind of preface me as like this big Marvel card collector or whatever, right? But like the money I spend on it is not important to me, right? From like I need it for other things perspective. So like if I blew a bunch of money on a set and I feel like buyer's remorse about it, I'm just like whatever, you know.
Mm, mm.
It's not something that unless I hit something really big that I don't want, it's easy because for me it's about ease of sale, right? If I hit
Yeah.
one really really big thing like I did in Spider-Man Metal, and then it's easy just to move that one big thing. But if it's like 50 smaller things that add up to a big thing, to me it's like it just becomes work, and I just don't bother,
Yeah.
right?
Fair enough. Fair enough. What was the
Yeah.
one big thing? You mind me asking?
So I had actually two big cards that I did end up selling. That got all me. It's funny because it got me all the money I put into that set back, which seems crazy, but I one of them I opened the one of one high series Ronin purple,
Nice.
um, which I think I sold for like I don't know 4,500 or something like that, and then I got very lucky on the I redeemed three comic covers because again I love the source material. That's what's most important to me. Those are in my collection, but so in the path of doing all these redemptions for on EPAC, I redeemed those three times. But one time I did the printing plates, and I happened to hit the Ben Riley Spider Man. So, and
Nice.
I'm not going to talk about what that sold for, whatever that went to.
Fair enough.
One of the collectors that is even bigger than me, right?
Yeah.
Way big. Like they collects a lot of the really high end stuff. I generally don't care about because again, I like the source material. So I like
Mm,
comic cuts and lame creator autograph. I don't think they're lame. I think they're amazing. But
yeah.
the things that a lot of people are just like, oh, here's a thing I can flip, and I'm just like, yes, send it to me.
Wonderful. So what's your so when did you so obviously you've got you did the comics when you were little, you did the Marvel cards when you were a kid.
Mhm.
And then when did you come, obviously having been a comic retailer for over a decade, when did you come back into kind of the modern cards? How did that happen?
So it was Keith
It's all
Boyle.
Cave's fault.
Uh,
Ugh,
well, he's at one point he's showing me these Marvel Masterpiece cards. I'm at his store, right? Because I go up and visit him from time to time,
yeah,
and he's showing me and he's trying to explain to me all the different variants and whatnot for these cards. I'm like, man, that just sounds like too much. And then COVID hits, and he's talking about this new Peach Momoko set that's coming to EPAC, and I just jump on there. I'm like, well, I'll just take a look at this, right? So I buy a pack. I'm like, oh, this is neat. I'm like, here, you can have all the cards from the pack or whatever. And then, you know, I don't know, months later, and I've I don't know how many I bought, but I redeemed the the they for that one they had it was pretty cool because it's way more than they usually give away, right? If you redeemed all the things, you could redeem a set of 5 complete sets of printing plates from the set,
that's
and
right.
I did that 3 times. So
Oh,
that'll kind of tell you how much of that set that I bought because I I didn't do I wasn't in MCCW at the time, I think, or maybe towards the tail end of it I got in there, but
yeah, yeah.
so I wasn't like buying big lots of things like kind of like I did X-Men. I didn't really open a lot. I just wanted to set up PMGs, which ultimately I completed. But I did that a lot of buying lots of cards from people, in MCCW. But with anime, I bought it all,
Wow,
you know.
wow,
So lot of stuff. Yeah, from
wow.
that. So that's what got me into it back. Well, got me back, right?
Yeah,
And then I started
yeah,
buying things that I didn't have before. Like I just listened to your podcast with I'll call them the super friends, right? Keith and Amanda and Billy, and you talked about that Silver Age Stan Lee auto. I have
yes.
that one. Like I have everything. I have every card from that set except for the George Tuska auto. That's the only card I'm missing from Silver.
Ah, oh, there's one of those on eBay UK that keeps popping
There's
up but
always a
not
few of
selling.
them out there,
Yeah,
but
yeah,
I can't keep my eyes focused on everything that I don't have,
yeah.
right? Or I might be broke.
Yeah, yeah. I was going to say you'd be like a three-legged dog in a forest, not knowing which
Yeah.
way to turn. Um, I It's interesting that because I loved anime, and I went. Yeah, I think I did. For me, because I'm not a big spender. I just don't have the income. I think I did maybe 4 boxes of it physical. Um, and I loved it. I really, really enjoyed it. And shortly afterwards, I kind of decided to stop for the most part collecting sets.
Yeah.
So, and then started selling off a lot of stuff. But I was I think I'd pretty much done, I was like 2/3 on the Mega Moon. I think I'd done the Hyper Mosaic pretty much.
Mm.
And yeah, just loved them. But, I managed to part with those and all the other stuff. But one thing I did come out of was the person who had acquired the 5 sets of plates, the character plates, and had the black cat. We came to terms on that. So,
Oh, great.
so at the
Yeah.
very least, I've got the rainbow there. I managed to I got the auto pretty soon because autos are one of those things, especially when they're numbered like that. And that's a fairly generous numbering, that set. Was it
It was.
120 of them, I
It
think?
was that hard to finish. I have all of them.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I think now it's a whole different ball game, but at the time there were lots of them around. But I snapped one of those up pretty quick. So yeah, so I've got my rainbow for that one. I'm very happy with it. But
Yeah. No, it's so since I started back, it's my favorite set
yeah,
still.
it is
Looking
gorgeous.
forward to the next one, right? I'm anime too. I'm a big
Mm,
Unbound collector as well. Although I'm a little bit disappointed in the current selection of characters, lately for this set, but
yeah.
still
Well,
all in.
so what's with, and this is absolutely no, I should preface this by saying this is absolutely no diss on Fred and Ian whatsoever. Um, but what's with Morbius coming back
I'm
again?
not sure.
What's that all about?
I just wonder if like they submitted. a bunch of cards, and maybe Upper Deck was, you know, just like the Morbius better than two or three other options. And
Yeah. Well, it's possible
it's
that
funny
something
because
got pulled.
I went
Yeah.
back and I'm comparing the two, right? The old Morbius to the new Morbius. And I'm like, I think from my aesthetic perspective, I think, they're both similar
Yeah.
in nature, and I like them both. So like from my point of view, I was like, I don't know why they like this new one. It wasn't like heads and shoulders above what he had done for the other one. So why are we doing this character
Mm,
again when
mm,
if
mm.
you're gonna do it, it's Marvel. So if you're gonna do a character twice, you would do Spider-Man a second time, right?
Oh, yeah.
Um, but one thing I actually appreciate about the characters that all of the people that are like lottery ticket chasing is the term I use when Unbound releases, is like I don't have to worry about being on right at the time it drops to make sure that I can get two or four or six or however many I'm looking to complete the sets, because I'm doing four right now anyway. Four base sets, three foil sets, two canvas sets, and two auto sets.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
I I've deliberately avoided both with Unbound 1 and Unbound 2 buying any from
Num
primary.
I was quick collecting, honestly, during Unbound One. I got so frustrated towards the end
Yeah.
because if I don't know, you were buying, I'm sure, when it first came out, but like a couple of the cards the first 12 weeks or so lasted over 24 hours.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And now when a good card comes out, like it's gone in like 5 minutes. And
Mm.
it frustrates me because, and I've mentioned this to Upper Deck, right? It's like, look, man, I buy every single week. I'm a big supporter of this set, and it gets really frustrating for me when I can't even get one order for two cards in. Like that's for me, that's my only expectation is like I just want to have the opportunity to purchase once, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
If I can get more than that, that's fine.
Mm.
But otherwise I can go get them from other folks.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
There's a lot of great collectors on there. I'm not as close with, obviously, they're just known through EPAC, and they're not, some of my closer friends, obviously, but very generous people in EPAC
Yeah.
that I built relationships with over time.
Mm. And that's what it's all about on there. I find, if you build relationships with people. I mean, I was, when I was spending a lot on EPAC, um, especially around Marvel Ages, Flair, annual 18 and 19, that kind of period just before COVID. Um, there was a core group of people that you knew you could rely on to help each other kind of get to the achievement or finish the set, or and obviously sometimes you will overpay to get something, but generally speaking, and Fleer Ultra Spider-Man as well. When I was chasing the rainbow foil of Black Cat, which I don't.
That's so funny.
Oh, the
I
rainbow web
got
foil.
actually, I only pulled a few cards, but I pulled these because I got these from you.
Oh, nice, nice,
Yeah.
very
Gold
nice.
foil, and the rainbow foil,
Oh, wow,
Spider Spider Gwen.
they look beautiful. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's one of those things where I started to see that was one of my periods where I started to kind of like mature a little bit as a collector and realized that much as I want to drive in all these different lanes, I can't afford to. So I just have to stick with Black Cat. Um, although my now 7-year-old daughter would probably slap me if she realized that I once had those and let them go. Never mind. On the anime plate set achievements, did you keep all those or did you?
Um, I think I have 13 out of 15. I
Oh, wow.
sold Iceman to an Iceman collector, and I sold Spider Woman, and I'm a big collector of that character anyway, but I sold it to, I can't remember his name. He's a really nice guy, but if you remember back to the first set of PMG's purple, green, blue that sold on, I think it was Golden, way back for
Right.
Fleer Ultra Spider-Man.
Okay.
So I sold it to him because he's a really nice guy. He's a Spider Woman collector,
Oh, is
and
it? It's not Brian, is it?
I think so.
Yeah, yeah.
I
Amazing
think so.
Spider Guy, I think.
Maybe
Oh,
I just
I can't
it's the
remember now.
last time I
I've been to
sold,
sleep since then,
and I'm
so
not
yeah.
on, and I've told you before, like I'm not on social media anymore. I mean, I have a Facebook
Right.
account, but I only use
Yeah.
it to talk to a couple of my friends and to post my
Mm.
Wordle score every day. But I left all of the comic and card collecting Facebook groups because it was just not good for me.
Yeah.
Uh, you know.
Yeah. Yeah. When was that? Was that a recent thing, or was it in the last year or
Um,
so?
uh, so that was last year. I don't know, late last year or sometime maybe. I just, I was a big, I'm a big rule follower when it comes to like when you agree to something, you follow those rules.
Hmm.
And one time, I think it was an MCCW. One person who's been a friend of mine for like 20 years posted a bunch of stuff for sale, and I was like, hey, let me let me just swing by your store, take a look, before you decide to sell the stuff. And then somebody got fussy with me, and I was like, you know what, I just don't need this anymore. Because what I did was I went over to the store, I and I was like, oh, these are the things I want. And then because this person really made me mad, I just bought everything, right, out of spite. And that's not who I am. That's not.
Mm.
So I was like, you know what, the social media, it's just not good for me, right? And I don't blame that person for that situation because, you know, yeah, I could see from the outside,
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
like, yeah, I get your point of view, but I would never break a group rule. Like
Yeah.
I'd never done that. I'd lost out on many cards because I'm not willing to go to that, private messaging route or try and snake
Yeah.
cards
Yeah. Yeah.
without,
Yeah. Yeah.
letting that person post what they're asking and all
Yeah.
these kinds of things. So that was for me, that was, and I actually appreciate that he did that because I'm mentally much better off not being in any Facebook
Well,
group.
no, I can, I, I relish the day where one day that might be a real outing, for me, but then I kind of started it, so that probably sounds a bit weird. But I know I've given serious thought to it, but for the fact that, much as I dislike aspects of Facebook, I don't think I could ever properly leave it. And of course I can. Of course I can choose to, but I don't think I'm quite mentally ready to take that step yet because there was the good of Facebook for me far outweighs the negatives at this point. Much as it caused me an awful lot, I had hair when I started the group. But the I've met so many people who I maybe have never met, but I consider close friends as a
Oh no,
result of
I
it.
agree with
So,
that.
that
Like I
from
said, I
that.
still have an account and people can still reach me if they
Mm,
want to on a one-on-one basis. I just think like, you know, I would, and this goes to industry related like retailer Facebook groups. Like if you think of how bad sometimes like the collector groups can get, like those industry Facebook groups are like constant knife fights between
really.
people. And so that and I moderated the biggest one in comics for a long time. Um,
I think you mentioned that to me on private message a few years back.
I probably did.
I think you
Yeah,
did. That rings a
it
bell.
was horrible. So trying to like keep some all these comic retailers acting like adults and engaging with, because we had all our publisher partners were in that group as well, um, and just the complete lack of professionalism at times was really disappointing. Having to treat people like honestly like grown adults as children because they
Hmm.
can't act in a professional manner. Um, and so that's one. Like the collector groups could get bad sometimes too, and also honestly, not being in them saves me a lot of money as well because I would, maybe it's bad for some of the folks that buy a lot and then trying to recoup every time. I'm sure there's other people that are buying that stuff up, but I would buy thousands of dollars worth of stuff at once just because I needed a handful of the things that were in that listing or
Yeah,
posting.
yeah, yeah,
And then thinking in well, I would say thinking, but like justifying in my mind that I'll just sell the rest of this later or whatever, and then I never do. Right?
uh,
So it's just for my wallet and for my sanity. It's just
yeah,
I've enjoyed, like I still engage people through EPAC and they can message
yeah,
me if they know me. Because some people that I dealt with a bunch really know what I like, and
yeah,
I really appreciate when they reach out,
yeah, yeah, yeah,
offer me a thing that
yeah.
they know I'm looking for.
Do you do you? Yeah, I imagine if you did like, scoop up quite a few lots, you probably that gives you if it's EPAC based, that would give you, that would still be kind of credit in that system, though, I guess,
It
towards,
is, yeah, I
you
get,
know,
yeah, and that's the majority of what I bought would be large lots that were on
mm,
ePack. There's plenty
yeah,
of physical stuff that I bought. I mean, obviously, you've sold me cards from time to time,
yeah, yeah,
um, and others have bought me. I bought physical cards that I've had shipped, but yeah, the majority is on ePack, where it's
mm,
I send you X amount of dollars, and then I get,
yeah, yeah, yeah,
unfortunately, like sometimes it's like 3 or 4 trades,
yeah,
right?
yeah, yeah,
Because they're selling me, 2,000, 3,000 cards
yeah, yeah,
sometimes.
yeah, yeah. So you mentioned in your notes, because you sent me the most fantastic like list of notes beforehand, that you're typically a completist. It really bothers me not to finish
Part
something
of
I
my
start.
problem.
So so because when I was talking to Keith, Keith's kind of got a bit of guide rails, I guess I think of them, like when you go bowling and you're crap at
Yes.
it. So he has his guardrails. He doesn't go for anything that's, was it 50 or under in the
Yes,
numbering?
under 50. That's
Yeah.
his number.
So I
Right.
imagine you don't have those guardrails. Is that what would?
Um, so my guardrail is uh is am I gonna go crazy trying to get all of these, and or is it gonna cost me an absurd amount of money that I just don't decide I don't care that much? So like I try not to go below 50, but sometimes I do, depending on how big the subset is,
Yeah.
but, like, I'll just use a Marvel annual foil as an example. Like from 2020, 2021, I at some point decided to do the X of 49 set,
Oh yeah,
which
yeah,
I
yeah.
have
Hmm.
about half of them. I'm not like really like trying to complete it quickly or anything. Like so the X of 21, that's not one I would ever go after because certain cards, when you get down below 50, and I really believe it's below 50, right? You do hit a point where there's more demand than supply for certain characters like
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Spider-Man, right? But anything, honestly, and this is my opinion, in Marvel, anything over X of 50, there are not 50 people that really, really want it. There might be a handful of people that are hoarding certain cards
Mm,
trying
mm.
to make money on them, but I don't think there's really more than 50 collectors that are like, I gotta have all of this character,
Yeah, yeah,
right?
yeah.
Hardcore. Um, Especially that with some of the prices on that have gone up I mean, I know they've come down a lot, right? But that had gone up for certain characters for certain, numbered parallels that they're just too expensive.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. No, it does get a bit crazy. Um, the I noticed one thing on you. 'Cause you sent me a little list. And you said currently I'm working on this. So you mentioned the Marvel annual foils, the 49. But from that same, is this recent set or is it last year's set? We're talking last year's set, aren't we?
Last year's set,
Yeah,
yeah,
2020-21 Carolina Dean printing plates.
yeah.
And then
Mhm.
you've got some numbers that I'm not going to read out because I wasn't sure if you necessarily want that out there because obviously that's a different type of chase. But I'm on a similar journey with my character there, and I just acquired another one actually.
Mhm.
Um, but some of them I just haven't seen. So one of the things I do with the plates, because I'm a crazy character collector, I have a spreadsheet, and I have a column on there that says owned, yes or no, and the next column is seen, yes or no. Because
Mhm.
sometimes with that one of one stuff, especially the
Yeah,
plates, it's like, do you even know if it's appeared, has it surfaced, is there proof of
right.
life? Which I quite often, so I've started doing that for plates now. So where you are on that plate journey, have you actually got proof of life of the ones that you're not got being annual
I've
EPA?
seen two of I sometimes I don't keep up as well as I would like, and I've
Mm,
seen two of the ones that I don't have sell. And then
right.
a third one sold, and then it came up again and I got it. So
Okay.
I don't mind the numbers. Like if someone has one of those, I would love to hear from you. I have 13 out of 20 of the Carolina Dean printing plates from that set because there's so many different variants of those
Oh,
cards. There's 20 printing plates for each character.
one for the base, one for the
And
hologram.
and it's I didn't pick her
Yeah.
for any particular reason other than like at some point I was bored and there wasn't anything coming out, and I
Yeah.
said to myself, "Hey, it would be neat if I could get all the printing plates of one character." And
Yes.
I looked at eBay, I looked at ComC, and I was like, oh, I think that one seems to be the one that might be at least get me the most progress. So
Mm,
that's what I
mm.
decided to do. Yeah.
So I've just opened my giant mofo spreadsheet for that year for my Black Cat collection. So let me just have a look at it. Now this is a world of pain that year because you've got the base, you've got the printing plates for the base. Then you got the printing plates for the variant.
Hmm.
Then you got the printing plates for the hologram. Mercifully, there's not a separate one for the foil board. Um, then you've got the printing plates for the fractal parallel. And finally, you've got the Pack Wars Victor Prize parallel.
Yep.
So currently from that year, I am at 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. 13 as well, I think.
Nice.
Yeah,
That's impressive,
yeah,
especially for that character, because the Carolina Deep printing plates, they're $20 to $40. I think one I paid a little bit more than that for, just because it was the fourth one for
yeah,
that particular parallel. But
yeah, yeah, yeah.
um, it's not an expensive character to get, right?
No, 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 no. I'm not
But
even sure
so
who she
it's
is.
much more impressive that you have 13 Black Cat plates.
Oh, believe me, I've had some assists on that. A few people kind of helping me out, and and that's the cool thing, is when
Yeah.
when you have that network of people that will kind of flag if they've seen it or snap it up if they see it for sale, and so that you don't miss it. Especially for me, with stuff popping up, and it might be kind of overnight. My time, stuff goes on the group, and the number of times I wake up and I've missed stuff. It can be painful. I mean, the previous annual 19 and 20 was bad enough because you had the base, the variant, and the number one spot. So you had three sets of four with that one. Um, and that one I'm in a far less happy position on.
Yeah.
I think I've maybe only got 3 or 4 of the 12 on that one, but at least I have one from each, at least one from each, which is good. Um, but yeah, no, first world problems and all that, but the struggle is real. Um, so I was just looking down here on the list of things that you go after and the list of things you like. Did you go in to Unbound Deep for year one? Because I'm
Yes.
curious to know if you
Week
ended up
one.
getting. Yeah, I'm curious to know if you ended up getting a sketch.
Yes, I got so I did, and that was thank good. I really appreciate Upper Deck not making Wolverine necessary for the achievement. I did get my because I complete things right. So I
Yeah,
have all 52 Unbound one autos, but it was appreciated that because I was like that was causing me, heartburn to have to worry about getting that Wolverine.
mm.
So I redeemed mine. I got Loki. It's on my account still.
Oh,
I really like the card a lot. It's unlocked, I think, right now. I think it's something I would part with for the right thing, but it took so much effort to get it that I have a
yeah.
different appreciation for it, right?
Mm.
Um, and again, like I don't. Most of the cards in my collection aren't so valuable that I wouldn't just necessarily go buy the thing I wanted,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
because most of the cards aren't tens of thousands of
Yeah,
dollars. So
yeah, yeah,
yeah,
exactly.
and I have like 3 or 4 sketches on my whole account because I usually get rid of most of them. I have an achievement one from Freddie and I have an achievement one from Tuvu
Hmm.
from Annual. It's a really nice storm sketch. And then I think the only other one on my account is Keith. I didn't get the Crow sketch from that weekly set that I really wanted, but Keith Boyle did. So he traded to me. So it's a really nice Ash sketch
Oh
from
wow,
from from the Crow.
cool. So
Yeah.
do you? Well, that's interesting. So you clearly kind of venture out beyond Marvel, in terms of the cards on EPAC.
Mhm.
So have you
Not
been?
much.
No, yeah, I was going to say there's probably not that much outside of. I mean, the Crow. What else have they had? Space Jam. I can't
So
picture you as a big Space Jam guy.
I was bored and I bought a bunch of Space Jam. I didn't finish the 2 auto achievement. Well, it's not an expensive product, and there was nothing else happening.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
I love I love sports. I love basketball. So
Uh-huh.
I did buy more than I should have, but not too much, I don't think.
Is it
Uh,
still available?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. People quit buying it. It was just why I kind of stalled out on the two autograph achievements because I'm
Right.
only
Okay.
like the really hard cards to get were the SSP 3D cards. So I only have one of six of those.
Mm,
And then I have three of six of the film cell tier fours,
okay.
and an extra one. But people quit buying the product, so there's just like nobody's trading it anymore. So
Right.
it's
okay.
not a big deal. I don't really care that much. I'll get them eventually.
Yeah. I mean, eventually they'll pop.
Because once all the LeBron autos kind of left, and there's still one on the printing plates, but people quit buying the product, and
Yeah.
one. It's like at this point, it's like 1 out of 28 that you could pull. So people are just like probably, I'm not
Mm,
gambling that much,
mm,
I
mm,
guess. So yeah, but The Crow I've been a fan of since I was a kid. I
mm,
love the comic, loved the original movie. So when that set came out, I was like, oh, you got me, you know.
mm, mm. Yeah. I'm the outside of Marvel that I tend to gravitate towards is the Bond stuff.
Oh yeah.
Um, and I'm both overjoyed and utterly distraught that uh, James Bond Black Diamond is coming. Because
Yeah.
I love the Marvel Black Diamond set.
Fortunately, for me, fortunately for my wallet, anyways, I'm not a big like. I love film, right? I've seen like everything, but um, I I'm not a big fan of like movie cards, like MCU cards. I mean, they don't like for me. That I don't care, right? And
Mm,
so I can stay away from Alien. I can stay away from Bond, stuff like that, without much headache.
yeah,
I'm gonna buy a little bit just because I like to open things, but
yeah, yeah, yeah,
I
yeah.
can stay away from that stuff. And the hockey cards on EPAC, like they might as well be garbage. Like I don't care what's on them. It's hockey. I live in Louisiana. Like it's not a sport here, right?
Yeah, no,
So
I can imagine it's not. I can
yeah,
imagine it's not. I have no idea when it comes to the hockey stuff. And some of those guys, whenever I see them interacting, I'm like, I've no idea what you're saying. I literally have no idea what you're saying. Because it's a whole different ball game. Or not a ball. It's a whole different game anyway, not a ball game.
it's
Um,
frustrating too when the hockey guys are buying cards so that they can just
yes, they buy up
trade in
Marvel
for
and
the
then to
hockey
trade. Yeah,
cards.
yeah,
I'm like, I
yeah,
got nothing for you, man.
mm,
I'm not gonna just start buying hockey cards
yeah,
so that I
yeah.
can get the Marvel cards from you.
Yeah, I tried it the other way a couple of times. Not big, just like a few packs here and there. Um, and I had no idea what was going on. Absolutely no idea what was going on. So I won't
Mhm.
be doing that again. Because how do I know? Unless it flashes red. In fact, one thing did flash red, but it turned out to be like it was still like just like $1 card at the end of the day. Because
Mhm.
one person's red flasher is another person's um junk. Um, so what's your, because you noticed on here a couple of etiquette things about trading on EPAC. So what's your kind of rule of thumb with EPAC trading, and how to behave on that? What's you find works for you?
Um, if so, I guess I would never send someone offer that I didn't think was equitable out of the gate, right? So I have just a general expectation that you're putting your best foot forward on your first attempt, and if your first attempt, maybe you're not doing that, or my perception would be you're not doing that. You should send a note and say, hey, look, I'm not sure, like I have a very small wish list of very specific things, right? So if you're like, hey, I really would, in your mind you're like, I really want this car, but I don't know exactly know what he wants. I'm just going to send a trade. And then I look at it, I'm like, that's terrible. But you didn't send a note, right? I'm just going to assume you intend to make a terrible trade, and I'm just going to decline it and move on and not talk to you, right? Because I have other things to do. I'm not trying to read your mind. But if you send a trade that is not equitable, but you send me a note, and then people do this plenty, right? That says, "Hey, look, maybe I know this isn't quite even, but I didn't know what you're looking for. Could you look at my cards? Whatever." I think that's totally fine,
Mm,
right?
mm,
But I'm not trying to read anybody's mind. I'm not trying to do a bunch of extra work. Either send what you feel is equitable or send a note, right, so that we can have a
yeah,
conversation.
Yeah.
because when we do that, that works out fine. Because what I'm looking for is someone who's wanting to be fair, right?
Yeah.
And I think in addition to that, uh, gosh, what else? What else was my kind of my big things there? Um,
Well, it sounds like communication is vital,
well, yes,
which
yeah.
I definitely echo
So
that.
that's
Yeah. Yeah.
for me. That's big,
Hmm.
right?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Again, being equitable. Um, I more communication is always better. Like send a
Yeah.
message, send a trade that has some kind of note in it or whatever,
Mm, mm,
and we can go somewhere. But like too many people, and you see, like I see them all the time. I talk to people. I'll just be honest with you, like the people that I collect with, like that we're a kind of a core group, and I'm not going to name any of them, but
yeah.
um, we keep a list of people that have consistently, sent bad trades, and we reference this list a lot. And what happens over time, if you're on that list, then you don't get any slack, I guess, for lack of a better term. We don't like. I'm not one to like argue with people in chat or send nasty messages back and forth. I just decline and move on because the other people that do want to engage and work with you or
Yeah.
whatever.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
There's other people worth spending your time on.
Mm. So, what's your you, I've referred to this a couple of times. It's brilliant. If only everyone was as prepared as this when they come on the podcast. You sent me a whole big thing, and it had different sections. It had hobby opinions,
Ah,
likes, dislikes, about Steve, about Steve's collecting. I love it. I love it. It's brilliant. It's almost like your resume or your CV, as we call them over here, in car collecting. So, and I don't want to go into all of these because, but there's some interesting talking points there. Um, so card prices and your hobby opinions.
sure.
Let's touch on that one. Um, I won't read it out unless you want me to, but I'm sure you can
You
remember what
read.
you
You can
said.
whatever you want to do. Where like I wouldn't
No,
like I told
good.
you before we started. Like I don't say anything that I
All right,
wouldn't say in front of
good,
anyone.
good. Lovely
So
stuff. Good. I'm far too polite because I'm English. So card prices have gone down significantly since the release of Marvel Universe, no, Metal Universe Spider-Man. There we go. And have not hit bottom. So what's your uh, can you expand on that? What's your take on that?
especially that's towards the tail end of COVID, right, or kind of in the middle, getting towards the end. And there was still a lot of hyping and pumping of cards going on.
Yeah.
But and again, and we talked about this before we started too, right?
Yeah.
Like it's in collectibles, someone has to start hype for a thing to take off. I don't care what it is. It's just the nature of the collectible hobby. Um, but what's happened with this versus other things that kind of catch fire and keep going is that there was a lack of attention put towards creating new collectors and keeping new collectors, right? Because you can hype a thing and it can go up for a minute, right? And can get white hot for a little bit. But if you don't get people engaged, new collectors engaged in your hobby, to get excited about the thing that you're excited about, then those values just they hit a number and then they just start going down,
Mm,
right?
mm,
And that's kind of what happened, in my opinion here, right? Is hype, uh, get a few new people in, but I think what happened here is that most of the new people that were attracted to it were not people that were interested in collecting it. They were interested in making a quick buck and moving on. And so they would hang around as long as they felt like it could make them money, and then they
mm,
just moved on to the next thing where they can
mm,
try and
mm,
do the same. And
mm.
so there was no uh, I would say none, but there was no measurable amount of new collectors in our hobby. So And I've seen, you know, I think I mentioned in my notes, Fleer Ultra Avengers, right? Because
Yeah.
that's another one that I'm, you know, for better or worse, trying to complete all the way down to the X of 63 autos.
Wow. Okay.
Hit e-back. Those are tougher right now, but you know, I'm about halfway through orange and blue, and these cards are I'm getting the majority of them for $1 to $4 each.
Mm.
You know,
When we
there's
finish, remind me to check my stash here because I've got a few hanging around
sure,
you might need.
yeah. I don't have. It's funny because I've just been buying, and I haven't even updated my spreadsheet yet with which ones I bought and which ones I missed, and
Yeah.
that'll make Keith Boyle happy because that means I'll just get to ship him ones that I bought extras of. Um, but you know, those cards, like, and a lot of people were hoping that the medallion cards, you know, the gold and platinum, you know, blue medallions, whatever, would kind of mimic the behavior from a market perspective of precious metal gems, and it just hasn't borne itself out. Right, they are
Mm.
not selling for anywhere near those types of numbers. And if you go back and look at Metal Spider-Man as an example, there were I didn't do the complete set of PMGs intentionally that time. I went after just the Bronze Age characters that I really like. Um, and so there's a few that I haven't completed because I just didn't pay that much attention for a while. But if you look from when metal sold out on Spider-Man metal sold out on ePack to today, those prices have crashed. They've gone down like 4x on
Hmm.
most of the
Hmm.
cards. I just saw like I think the other day the High Series Venom, which is one of my favorite cards in the set because it's a McFarlane Venom. Um, I think sold for like $400, $500 the other day when it was selling for 2,000. You know,
Wow. Hmm.
when the set sold out on ePack. I mean, that's the kind of crap. Like if I hadn't sold my Spider-Man printing plates early, I probably would have got a lot less for them today if I
Yeah.
was to try and sell them.
Yeah.
So I'm not saying that these things can't go back up because
Mm.
they can, but um, you know, I don't think we're quite at the bottom just yet. I think
Mm.
Fleer Ultra Avengers is gonna kind of help us drive us there because they're really nice cards. I really like them. That's why I'm going after the
Yeah.
set, but there's just no demand for it. From what I'm seeing, I mean, people are basically, I think, holding their line at the price they're trying to get for the boxes just because they don't want to go lower. Um, but I think if we were in a completely free market and people were just listing their boxes at auction with no reserve, then they would be selling probably for about half of what they're asking for
Mm.
today.
Mm. Mm. Interesting. And there's actually a decent amount out there because of the blasters as well. You know,
Absolutely.
there's a
Yeah, I don't
decent
compete
amount
with
of physical
those.
product
Yeah.
out,
Yeah,
and
that
with
makes it
annual.
easier. But it's there's just so many inserts and so many number cards that there's a lot of product, and
Yeah.
it hasn't even hit e-pack yet, and that's when it really the prices really tend to bottom out.
Mm. Mm. Mm.
Once the number parallels start to hit e-pack. So you know, I expect most of the even down to the reds, the burgundies, the X of 141s to be sub $5 on a lot of
Wow.
those. Yeah,
Interesting.
aside from the you know the usual suspects from a
Yeah. Yeah.
character
Yeah. Of course.
perspective.
Of course. Like the venoms and things like that. What's the Oh, my brain's gone empty now. I did have a question for you while you were talking, but it's gone out of my head. Um, so I'm going to go back to your magnificent list here with upcoming product releases. Now, I think I know what you're saying here. You know, with so many upcoming product releases, um, sealed prices are likely to decline. I think this year, if you look at, I think Keith made a point that said, this year already there's been more releases than in the last like two or three. And that's only going to continue. We haven't seen I mean, I know granted you're not collecting any of the MCU sets, so that probably over halves that number for you. But there's a lot of product suddenly out there. And to me, it feels like, okay, 2 years, go back 2 years and people were crying out for new products. There was
Mhm.
nothing there, which is, partly explains why Spider-Man Metal was so Um, but now, I mean, it might not be the sets that people are jonesing for because you throw a rock and you can hit another post saying when's Marvel Masterpieces 2022. Um, and so there's a kind of a bit of a micro frenzy around that that's building. But outside of that and maybe Premiere, it's all coming.
It
It's all
is.
coming down the
It is.
pipe, and
There's
that's gonna there's gonna be to paraphrase, what was it? Kevin Smith and his Smodcast podcast used to do. Scott Mosier used to say, "There's so many to choose from," and there are. I mean, you can dine out right now.
Yeah, there's going to be a more products released than people can keep up with.
Mm,
Uh, we're going to, I think, go back a little bit towards the days when, there were sets on EPAC for a good period of time versus,
yeah, yeah,
once COVID hit, they started all selling out really fast at some
yeah,
point.
yeah.
Um, and the products, the people aren't that excited, right? I mean, I enjoyed Eternals as a film, but I don't see people being terribly excited about buying those cards. And I know from conversations I've had with people and what the people are basically trying to shovel their Shang-Chi allocations kind of out the door. That there's not a ton of excitement around that set.
Mm,
It's
mm,
another movie I really enjoyed again, but I don't collect
mm,
the MCU cards. I don't.
mm.
I mean, I think that you collect what you like, and if you like the MCU, that's amazing.
Yeah,
But
yeah, yeah.
me, like I don't need an autograph from movie star or whatever in my collection. I'm very much about the source material, so
Mm,
that stuff doesn't excite me anyway. And then even if you're just focused on the comic related sets, there's a lot of those in the pipeline too. And like, especially for if you're like me or if you're like Keith Boyle, who that's the stuff that we're after because we're not on the MCU side. Like, and just the idea of trying to complete at least that to what we feel is complete on those when they're released, they're going to release that fast.
mm.
Like Philly Retro Avengers is going to hit EPAC soon. Annual is going to hit EPAC soon. I'm doing both of those, and so Annual I'll definitely be in on all the achievements, but I might just skip Flair Ultra Avengers depending on what those achievements look like. At least
Yeah,
from buying that much to
yeah,
do those versus just trying to complete my sets
yeah.
on buying those on CompC or whatever.
Be interested to see what they are. What do you think they might be for Flea Ultra Avengers? Do you think they'll go the comic cover route again for some classic books?
I hope not, but they probably are. Because if they do, I'll probably try and pull one. But I'm hoping that they do something that I'm not really excited about, so that I don't feel torn about whether or not to do achievements for it.
Uh,
But they did so many comic cuts that I can only assume that they're gonna do comic cover
yeah,
achievements,
yeah, yeah. Well, they've
and
got those
especially since they
things.
did the numbered comic covers, which I really like. They look really good in person. I have a few of those. But it's funny. Like I think most of the action that you're going to see once it hits EPAC is people trying to buy and sell the medallions.
Mm,
MCCW. That's what I first see because people like the shiny things and the things that they think are going to be valuable.
well,
Versus,
I just like the shiny
I
stuff. Yeah,
I like all
yeah.
the stuff that people tend to just not care about that
I mean,
much.
I'm just aiming for a base 50 medallions would be happy for me.
Yeah, and
It'd be
I'm a
nice
big
to get a couple
Thanos
of
guy,
comic
so
panels.
I'll do all of the Thanos
Yeah.
medallions or whatever, just because. But I'm not really after doing the sets like I did on. Like I
Mm,
completed everything up down to X75 on X-Men Metal. I didn't do the greens, but I did everything, above
wow,
that metal. So
wow.
not going that route. I think the set.
Now, are they all sat on EPAC, or do you actually ship this stuff home? Do you, and if so, how are you storing it? What's your setup?
So yeah, I ship a lot of it home. I keep stuff that I like duplicates and things that I'm not going to be attached to that I don't mind
Sure.
trading on my ePack account. Um, or like with annual or ages, I just have thousands and thousands of cards on my ePack account. Like I think I like you were doing some giveaways one time. even after I left MCCW. So I just sent you a bunch of annual stuff, like a set of Fractal, a
That's
bunch of
right.
other
It
stuff. I
was
still have like 28 sets of Fractal.
yeah, that's right. It was the
You know,
I think it was the
because I did.
4,000 member giveaway. Actually, we've just gone 5,000. So it was
Yeah.
it was last
So
year.
yeah, I gave you a bunch of stuff,
Mm,
and yeah, that stuff I don't usually ship them because there is a 25 cents a card is a lot, and when I could just somebody wants I could just trade them a set or
well, I think
whatever.
that's the thing. If you've got your own set at home, there's no point in you sending another 20 of them home
I
at
agree.
all.
Yeah,
Especially not,
yeah, because I'm not
even if
trying to
you didn't
figure
pay
out
25 cents.
how to build a website where people
Yeah,
can go buy my cards from me.
someone's already
Keith,
done it.
Keith this I admire Keith Boyle for putting all that effort. I mean, he's got his own huge, massive collection at
Mm,
home, and he's got a giant business to run anyway. But for me, it's like if I want to just move some cards that way, I'll just move over to ComC and I'll sell them
yeah,
there.
yeah. Did you do Thanos Rainbow from Masterpieces 2020?
No, I didn't. For 20 for masterpieces, I just did all the achievements for 2020. I
Yeah.
didn't really do anything fancy or special for that one. That
Mm,
was when I was kind of really it's my first experience with the way they do masterpieces now because I wasn't in for 2018, and so I this is another way I reduce how much I collect is I collect through Keith sometimes, and he was doing all the tier fours and all this stuff. So when I got one,
right.
I would just let him have it, and rather than me do all the tier fours and all the other stuff as well.
Yeah.
So I
Yeah.
just yeah.
I've got I mean if I like I said it again, if I had the financial bandwidth, I remember getting the Thanos base card fairly early on and just loving the artwork on it.
Oh
It's one
yeah,
of my favorite pieces
it's
from
a
that set.
fantastic set.
It is. And Ebony Moore as well. I mean, I could PC Ebony Moore so hard because I think the image, especially from Masterpieces 2020, but also, because I do cross over into the MCU realm. Um, the interesting thing I find, I was having this conversation with someone yesterday on Messenger about the uh, I'm not going to say quality, but I'm going to say the set construction of the MCU sets that have come out so far this year. Because um, there are few people who are championing them from the corner. But I think that's because the majority, certainly, I mean, I remember we did an episode of this podcast about it. It's because up until issue 50 something, we barely touched on any MCU stuff. And someone quite rightly pulled us up on it and saying, well, hang on a minute. A lot of the Facebook groups are primarily focused on the comic art side, but there is a very passionate MCU
Absolutely. Yeah.
collecting, which is great. I love it. So that kind of opened my eyes to a lot of stuff. But I very quickly realised that I've got limited physical space. It's kind of effectively it's this room now, which was purpose made for it. Um, I can't own 25, 30 MCU movie sets plus all the Disney Plus. I can't do what you and Keith do with annual on those, and to a degree, nor would I now want to. So what I've been trying to do with that is Shang-Chi is a prime example. Shang-Chi has had a pretty rough reception so far, but when I actually opened the box I got a couple of weeks back, I'm pleasantly surprised at the actual, regardless of what you think about the set and the set construction, the quality of the cards is actually is really nice. They're beautiful cards. So you kind of can't fault them for that. On the majority of the boxes I've opened this year from One Division, Falcon Winter Soldier, Shang-Chi, the QA has been on point.
I know.
No
Yeah,
issues
I've heard
whatsoever.
that, and
Um,
I've heard I've heard that the obviously the construction of the cards is really nice.
mm,
I was talking I think to Keith or somebody else I can't
yeah,
remember. They they're really impressed,
yeah,
right, overall with the set.
yeah,
And I feel like we're almost, in a way, with some of the sets, anyways, going back to when I was, in the late '80s, early '90s, with some of the movie products, where it's not, some of it's not going to feel so limited, like things have in the last few years. Where, like, when it's funny, in 1989 when Batman came out, I bought so many of those Batman movie cards. I just absolutely love them, but it's just junk wax, right? I mean, it's just like the
Mm.
old baseball cards back at the time. And um, you know, I'm actually in favor of a lot of them releasing a lot of sets that are at a lower price point that are more accessible to more people
Yeah.
because like I can only imagine how much Allure is going to cost.
Mm,
Um,
mm.
I've just seen like all of the list of parallels for that, and I've seen pictures of a lot of them, and like from my perspective, like even if that was like an annual, like a not annual, but a
A
comic
comic
based,
art. Yeah. Mm.
I could not be super excited about 12 or 15 parallels. That's literally the same card, but has a different color and
Yeah.
it's just numbered differently.
Yeah.
That's just
It's the
not
spread.
exciting
Yeah.
at
It's the
all.
spread of it.
Kind
Um,
of bare bonesing these things
mm,
down to where we don't have these cool insert sets and things like that. I hope we don't get there with Upper Deck the way that kind of Fanatics and Panini have kind of gone.
mm,
I just wouldn't be a big fan. Like I want sketch cards in the sets because I want people to be excited about sketch cards, not necessarily because I care about them, because I only have a handful that I keep. And I want all these other great inserts that probably do increase the production cost because we're
mm.
not just reprinting the same thing on a different color,
Yeah.
10, 15 times or whatever.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'd hate for it to go in, that other direction.
Yeah. Yeah. It's interesting. What I'm tending to do with these Disney Plus sets is, I'm going in with zero expectations, just appreciating for what they are. And personally, I do chase the movie autos because it's something I've always kind of done. I've got a whole big folder back there I've lost, and most of the auto cards from that. And that was and I just love them because for me it's a tangible part of the production, especially if it's on card. And the majority of Upper Deck's stuff isn't, apart from the James Bond sets. Um, but what I've been trying to do is just find an angle of joy in each of those sets to chase after. Just rainbowing an image or two, or going after a particular chase set, something like that, which just keeps it nice and tight. I could have a single binder just with a page or two from each of the sets, just the cards I really like, and happy days. Just a little taste. Um, which is quite nice. And I've started to do that a little bit with some of the new sets like Fleer Ultra Avengers. I've no interest in chasing after the base set. Give me the shinies. So first appearance, Silver Age,
Mm-hmm.
medallions, and I'm happy. You know, that'll do
Yeah.
me. Thank you very much. I don't need any more of that because there's plenty of them out there, and if I need to see them, I can go and have a look online. Um, but how do you store all your stuff? This is what I'm curious about. Yeah, have you got?
I have some binders, at least for the thinner cards that I keep them in. I haven't received them yet because it was a Kickstarter or Indiegogo. I can't remember where I got them from, but there's really cool new top loader binders
Okay.
that I've got on order that are supposed to arrive later this summer that I'm considering um, using for more of my collection.
Mm, mm,
And then let me see if I've got one within. Yeah, I keep a lot of things in top not top loaders, but in one touches,
yeah.
right? And so this is BCW has these great, you know,
Oh, you got the
hard,
BCW ones. Yeah, yeah,
hard to carry, handle.
yeah, yeah.
So I really like these. So I have a bunch of these now, but I keep a lot of my stuff that are in one touches in. Um, but yeah, it's in this kind of state of flux because I don't have part of my house is being remodeled. Well, my house is a constant state of remodel, but I don't have what I'm going to consider my permanent place for that stuff because right
Yeah,
now I'm
yeah,
in
yeah.
my office and I work in here and I only have so
Mm,
much room for stuff.
mm,
Um, so I have binders. I have some of those boxes. I have stacks of cards that you can't see that are on my desk right now that
hmm.
probably shouldn't be because I need the space for work. But um, yeah.
Yeah, that's why I've kept my office as a separate room, because I can be happily surrounded. In fact, I had a good old tidy up in here last weekend, and so there's not actually a single card on this desk here.
Nice.
But no, the BCW ones I like, but I couldn't get them over here. But I could get the Ultra Pro drawers, which are
Hmm.
quite nice, and they actually work really well for the one touches. So that's my the MCU costume relics and the autos and things
Yeah.
like that. But my
I
Black Cat
actually,
sketches are
so
in those.
once my upstairs is finished, I do. So one thing I got one time when we owned the store was,
Hmm.
um, if you remember going to a library when you were younger and they
Yeah,
had hard catalogs,
that's right.
right?
Yeah, yeah.
I have a lot of vintage like card catalogs, like really nice,
Nice.
well built ones that are antiques at this point.
They're often beautiful pieces of
Um,
furniture as well.
so some of my stuff will go into some of those, and
Mm,
I'll build a nice, base or cabinet to build around them and whatnot. So I'll anticipate storing some of my cards that way at some point. But right now those are just kind of stacked up out of the way while we remodel part of the house.
mm, Okay, well, good luck with that. It's a never-ending thing, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's an interesting point you've raised here, and I've referred to it. I've referred to it previously as cards being in price jail. Um, a lot of Marvel card prices online sit where they are at this point because the sellers aren't willing to go lower, even though there's no demand at all for their asking prices.
Mhm.
What's your I mean, obviously it's very clear what you meant there, but can you expand on that at all? What kind of thing are you
Well,
seeing?
I mean, again, we're sitting in a market that's down right now
Yep.
for our cards. And just to preface, I don't like to think about trading cards in terms of like, market prices or market values. I don't. I just like them because I like them, right?
Mm,
But the reality is, like, there's a market. People, or there are people that are in business, like that have actual legal businesses. There are people that have kind of their, I don't, side hustle or whatever, where
mhm,
they
mhm,
have a job, but they also like to, what they enjoy. Part of the hobby they enjoy is buying and selling on the side, right? Um, but there's also this aspect. People spend a certain amount of money on things,
Yeah.
and at some point they feel like either the things are going to bounce back or they need to hold a line because they don't want to part with them for less than X, Y, or Z dollars. And so the things just start to sit. And another part of it too is like, you kind of, nobody's like constantly updating their prices, right, on online or whatnot. So they just tend to sit, and
Mm,
at some point they just stop moving, and they hope that that price where there's maybe two or three of that thing sitting at about the
mm,
same price, it just kind of becomes the price, and that's
mm.
not necessarily going to always be the case. But that's kind of where I think we're sitting right now, right? Like
Yeah.
I've mentioned, the prices of Flair Ultra Venture sealed, right? If we open those boxes, there would be much, much less in what those general
Yeah.
collectors would perceive as the value of what they're paying for. You're
Yeah.
buying a lottery ticket, essentially, and there's so many insert sets. Like I've seen a box open that the two big insert, maybe there was a nice medallion, but the other two big inserts were both blue parallels, right? And there was nothing else in the box. And
Mm.
I've seen boxes of anime opened where there was no auto in the box. I watched someone on Whatnot open, a box, and there was no auto in it.
Oh,
And so uh, people eventually, either people will lower their prices, or we'll just sit in this market where there's no demand for the thing. Is just not going to sell because there's
mm,
people aren't willing to meet the buyers kind of where they are. So, and for
yeah.
me, that hurts sometimes because I want to finish some things, but I'm also not willing to pay double what I know the thing would actually sell for,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. 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 I mean, I think it's down at the moment. I think it's down across the board. I think, the economy's pretty shitty
Well,
over here.
inflation,
And so, yeah.
and you could argue about why inflation is what it is, but it is hurting people,
That's what I mean. Yeah. It's
the
really
average
hurting. Yeah.
person.
Mm,
Um, so it is a challenge. People are spending less
mm,
on these, nice to have items,
mm,
right?
mm, mm.
People's spending on fun, et cetera, is going down because
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
they have to
Yeah.
eat.
Yeah. I mean, don't get me wrong. I'm willing to buy some of the stuff I'm seeing out there, because I want it, but I just can't. I've got significantly $300-400 less spending power a month than I had 6 months ago. And that's happened relatively quickly. But
Yeah.
I could see it coming.
Mhm.
And I think a lot of people are in the same boat.
Oh,
Um,
definitely. Definitely.
inflation up, wages aren't keeping pace with it, certainly over here.
Definitely not.
Um, so, I've just changed job, but did I get any more money? Nope. I'm kind of within the same organization, but my view on it is probably shouldn't say this out loud on a podcast that someone who works for my organization might listen to. So I won't. I'm going to move on. Um, so I want to get on to things that really I want to end on a positive. I want to talk about things that really excite you in a moment. But
Absolutely.
I'm going to go on to your dislikes because one of them really shone out on there. Now, obviously, you've been in the comic space for quite a while.
I have.
So you kind of know where the body's buried. So you've seen trends, you've seen a lot of the behaviors you've talked about happening in that space, I'm sure.
Mhm.
Um, and one of the things that struck my eye from your list of people the things that you dislike, not people, is card grading. And you said there's
Mhm.
just a flow over my personal dislike of having graded comics in my PC. Nothing wrong with grading, it's just not for me. Um, so what's your you mentioned CGC, but I think that's a separate thing. It just happens that they're next to each other on the list. So what's your kind of take on grading now in cards and where did your because I know a lot of comic retailers really dig grading books and dealing in graded books, but I'm guessing that's never been your cup of tea.
I think they have for me the value in grading, whether it's cards or comics, is in the ease of sale when you're dealing with someone um, through the mail or on
Yeah,
the internet,
yeah,
basically, right? You're guaranteeing that the thing, whatever it is what it they purport it to be, right?
yeah,
The condition of it.
yeah.
But for me, beyond that, it has no utility, you know. So I like to look at things up close, and obviously, maybe I have, I've spent a lot of time, learning how to grade comics, understanding, what makes the condition of a comic or a card or whatever. So um, I can, since I have that skill over built up over time, like I can look at a thing and feel confident after that it's that the price that's being asked for it, I'm comfortable with paying, etc. Um, so for me, again, utility, the only utility grading has is that if I have a thing that's graded and I want to sell it,
Mm,
it's
mm,
easier for me to sell it at the price that I want to get for it.
mm,
But
mm.
there's costs associated with making that thing graded, right?
Yeah,
And
yeah.
that can be really low or it can be really high depending on the value of what that item is. So yeah, I don't have a lot, and I like to be able to open it and look at it, especially if it's a comic book, right? Cards is
Mm,
not quite so much because I can see the front and the back and there's no interiors or
yeah,
anything like
yeah.
that. But I just like most of my comic books, and I have thousands in my personal collection, right? They're in my LRs. And I'm nitpicky about those, just like I am about cards in my personal collection. Anyways, like most of I collect a lot of Bronze Age, some older stuff older than that, but most of the stuff that I have in my personal collection looks like it just came off the shelf yesterday.
Mm,
Um, so, because I kind of, in a way, treat like I'm kind of like a historian in a way for the things that I keep, and so and I don't get me wrong, I read lots and lots of comics, and I have over the course of my life. But the stuff that I have now, for a lot of the all intents and purposes, I just like it to look like it's brand new.
nice.
So, but and to me, like if I can only get it and it's graded, or if I get it what I feel like is a reasonable price and it's graded, yeah, I'll get it. But I'd rather it wasn't.
Yeah, 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 yeah. Yeah, well, I hear on the comics front. I'm tempted to get a few books, graded books, but they would literally be for display only.
Yeah.
The ones I really want to get because I have raw copies of them to read. I mean, I've still got my copy of the Quartet, Web of Spider-Man 90 being the one that I got, which was mail ordered to me from a UK comic seller when it came out, and it's one of the first comics I ever bought online. No, well, anyway, remotely, be it online or mail order. I can't remember which it was now, but and the postman folded it. putting it through the face box. So my copy of Web 90 has still got a very faint. I mean, it's been flat ever since, but still got a very faint fold line. It didn't hard fold it, but it was still, once you've done it, you've done it. But I love that quartet of holograms from Spider-Man 30th anniversary. Those four
Yeah.
books, I think they look absolutely stunning. So I do have a second set of them raw that I specifically bought a few years ago for the express purpose of display. But I'm now very, very tempted to get a quartet of those just in matching number, whatever grade. It doesn't have to be a 9, anything. It could be a 7, as far as I'm concerned. I just want them to be matching the 4
Right.
because it's for the display of them, not for the grade necessarily.
Right.
Um, so, but outside of that and a few Black Cat books, it would just be for the cover. It would just be for curb appeal.
Mhm.
Um,
Yeah, I do. There's a few things that I have that are graded that I think basically to ensure their you know they don't get damaged over time.
yeah,
Like I have a couple of really rare. Um, I say rare, like they're hard. Like so, I have the first two appearances of Sergeant Rock as an example, and it's they're really rare. They're hard to find anything that in mid or high grade. They're very hard
mm,
to find.
mm,
So
mm,
mine are I think our Army at War number 81 is like a 6.0 or 6. One of them's a 6 and one of them's a 6.5. But they're very hard to find in grades above 4.
mm.
So those are graded, and I did send those in myself. I have a few other things that are graded essentially just to make sure that you know they're maintained. But other than that, the things that I have that are graded are just because they were available at the time, and
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
so I have 2 or 3 boxes of graded comics, but the vast majority of my collection is raw.
Yeah, yeah, me too. I think I can count on one hand the number of, actually maybe two hands, the number of graded books I've got. I think I've got about 6 or 7. That's it. Um, Even the really early Spider-Mans I've got, they're in nice comic bags. I'm very fussy. I'm like you, I'm quite fussy about my comic bags. I have to use a particular brand, a particular brand of backing board. And I tend to double and triple up the backing boards for the older issues just to make sure, there's that
Yeah, and if you're
rigidity
using
there.
regular ones, that's what you should do. I
Yeah.
use you know, uh, my lights and halfbacks normally. Sometimes I use the fullbacks, the thicker ones, even thicker ones. But those are archival. You never they're much more expensive than regular bags and boards,
Yeah.
but you never have to replace them ever.
Yeah. 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 No, the bags I go for, collector line tends to be the brand I go for.
Mhm.
I've no idea if they're a European or a US brand, but those are the ones I go for. Always have. Love them. Um, so what's exciting you about what's coming up? What are you looking forward to? What's kind of your, apart from obviously rounding out your Fleer Ultra Avengers
So I'm
stuff that you've got?
obviously very excited about Marvel Annual. It's one of my favorite sets. I know we consider as collectors, would generally say it's a low end set,
Hmm.
um, but it's one of my favorites. Like last year, I went a little bit overboard, but I I did I have a complete set. I have almost 2 complete sets from last year, and I mean that's like every single card.
Wow.
And the only thing I'm missing to have 2 complete sets are the 3 uh, X of 10 gold EPAC cards. I have one
Right.
set of those. Obviously, you can only you're only gonna do that once each week. But if I got those 3 cards, I'd have 2 sets. Um, and so I did that. I got a sketch, not the first week, but the other 2 weeks I got a sketch. And my intent was to get all of the EPAC cards, the not the EPAC, but the Pack Wars cards. But
Backwards.
of
Yeah. Yeah.
course, Pack Wars sold out so fast that
Mm.
most of them are never going to get released. So for me,
Yeah.
that's really frustrating. Um, but it is what it is.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So many more great Pack Wars achievement cards that just aren't going to be released from that set. So I'm really looking forward to annual this year. Um, Looking forward to, and the other one that I'm really looking forward to is Anime 2. So
Mm.
and there's other sets coming out as well, Premiere and Beginnings. And I'm sure I'll buy plenty of that. But the two I'm most looking forward to are
Yeah.
annual, and I haven't bought any annual yet. Keith Boyle, who did me a big favor and opened tons and tons of blasters, has my set of blues, so I don't need to open
Nice.
any blasters.
Nice.
He has the set of blues for me. Um, but so annual, I won't buy any until they hit EPAC, just
Yeah.
because I do all the achievements for that.
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
Um, and then Keith and my other big industry friend who I want to make sure I call out, collector friend, comic retailer friend, is Paul Zenisek.
Mm.
So those are my two tightest friends in the industry and in card collecting, and so they help me out a lot when it comes to acquiring the things so that my brain's not on fire because I'm
Yeah. Yeah.
missing
Yeah.
X, Y, or Z.
Yeah.
Yeah,
No, Paul, I've been meaning to do this actually because you've all referenced each other to me at various points, and it so happens that Keith came on his own first, and you've come on your own. I keep meaning to have all three of you on, just to, just to kind of retail a round table kind of vibe. Um,
that could go in all kinds of directions.
you know
Yeah,
what? That's not a bad thing. That's not a bad thing. Who knows? I put Paul, bless him, he put so much work in on the group moderation, so he's probably he's probably going to relish spending a couple of hours away from it, chatting with you and me and Keith.
we
Uh,
joke with him all the time. Like, are you quitting yet? Are you burned out on that yet? Because I know it can be rough.
yeah. It has its moments. I think it's fairly safe to say. Um, so you mentioned you're kind of not really on social media, so it's not as if I can say to you where can people follow you on Instagram because you're not. I'm guessing you're not on Instagram.
I have an
Uh,
account. It has like two pictures on it. I don't really use it. I have a
Oh, you're best
Twitter. I
off.
don't
You're
really
best
use
off.
it.
Yeah, you're best
So
off.
no.
Well,
Um,
sometimes it's about just grabbing the username, isn't it?
yeah.
You know, if you've got a particular username you like to use. Where could be what if someone wanted to look at your stuff on EPAC? What's your username on EPAC?
Big Easy Steve is
Big Easy Steve, and that's
my
because you're in Louisiana.
yes, that's correct. I live just outside New Orleans.
Is that where you're
So
from originally?
everybody thinks that if you're from Louisiana, you must be from New Orleans.
No, well, no, I was going to ask where you're from originally.
It's funny. I originally am from. I was born in Annapolis, Maryland, and so I
Oh,
have
okay.
relatives up there still. My dad worked for a bank when I was a kid, and he moved us down to Louisiana when I was 4 or 5,
Oh,
and I
wow,
spent
okay.
most of my life here.
Yeah,
So
yeah, yeah, yeah. Cool, cool. All right. Well, Stephen, you prefer Steve, don't you?
I do.
You've
Yeah.
referenced Steve. Oh yeah, that's right. I never want to assume I can call a Stephen a Steve. So I used to have a flatmate called Michael, and he used to bristle if he introduced himself and he goes, "Hi, I'm Michael," and the person replied, "Oh, hi, Mike." I used to see him literally tense up.
I don't
Uh,
mind either one. It's just, it's funny, especially when we used to own our store, when people would try and ingratiate themselves and they come into the store and they'd be talking to my wife and they say, "Oh, I know Steven," and I'd
yeah,
start talking. She, in her mind, she'd be like, "Oh, you don't know him that well."
yeah, yeah.
'Cause anybody
That's
that really
hilarious.
knows him doesn't call him that.
That's absolutely hilarious. That's absolutely
Yeah.
hilarious. Um, Before we go, just because I'm curious, and I forgot to ask this of Keith the other week, your craziest moment of owning a comic store with a
Like,
customer or collector.
oh my.
And that's probably going to, you've probably got a list as long as the proverbial.
I having to having to throw someone out of my store because they were being really disruptive and walking another person around with a leash and collar. Yeah, that
Lit
was.
Literally with a leash and collar.
It's terrible, but like the things that always stand out the most are when you have to do things you don't want to do,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
like ask someone to leave, or because that wasn't a situation where like I was, we had to just be like, you need to go. It was like, can people are trying to shop. Can you please not do that? And
Mm,
polite asks, and then finally having to tell someone, look, you can't come in here anymore. And that only in 11 years, that only happened 7 or 8 times where we had to be like, I'm sorry, you
wow.
can't shop here
Mm,
anymore for, whatever the reason was. So
yeah.
those are the
God.
things that are always stand out. And then the other big one that probably stands out the most because it was more recent is how awful people were in general during COVID. You know,
Interesting.
if they'd had a little more grace and been a little more understanding when we had, mask mandates and things like that, and we're just asking, people to, you know, be considerate of other people.
Yeah.
Even though our son didn't want to take over the story, we might have kept going with it for a while. But between him not wanting to run it one day and people just being generally terrible, that made it really easy for us to decide
Yeah.
to
Yeah.
shut it down.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Interesting. Did you ever watch that show on AMC, Comic Book Men? That's
Yeah,
set in Kevin Smith's comic book
absolutely.
store. How? Because I watched that because I'm a Kevin Smith fan, but I'm more of a Tell 'em
So am
Steve
I.
Dave
Yeah.
fan. Do you listen to Tell 'em Steve Dave
I don't.
podcast? Because that's those guys who ran that store
Yeah,
basically.
obviously. Yeah.
So that's why I watched it because I've been listening
I'm
to
a
Tell 'em
big
Steve
fan
Dave.
of Mallrats and
Mm,
and I did watch the show Comic Book Man quite a bit, and it was always fun. Obviously, 9 times out of 10, all those situations were staged or whatever, but it's
yeah,
still fun.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I thought that was interesting. It just popped into my mind as you were talking about the store there. Um, Cool. All right. I'm gonna circle us into land. So, all I will say to our beloved listeners and viewers is, if you enjoy listening to the podcast, if you enjoy watching the podcast, please like, subscribe, please comment if you want to give feedback. If you want to be on the podcast, please hit me up. You can message on the social media, or you can email the mccpod@gmail.com. You can also leave us a voicemail, but I can't remember the link for that now. And I think that's it in terms of the housekeeping. Um, Steve, thank you for coming on today. I appreciate you giving up some of your morning.
I really appreciate you making time for me. Thank you.
Oh, no, you're more than welcome. Steve, you know how we sign off our podcast every week.
I do. So I'd like to say, I think, be kind to your fellow collectors, collect what you enjoy. And thanks for joining the Marvel Car Collectors podcast.
Great. Thank you very much.